When you think about the Pawn Stars, you often think about them doing high-stakes deals that often involve big money. And yes, that does happen quite a bit in their trade. However, there is another way that they can go about things if they want to get a nice item. After all, they are a pawn shop, and sometimes that means that you trade one valuable item for another. Over the years, Rick Harrison and crew have pulled off some very nice trades for items of greater value, and you might be surprised the swaps that took place. So, we'll break it down for you. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 5. French double-barrel gun for a guitar. If you've watched the show for long enough, you'll know that historical guns can be one of the biggest and most valuable items that Rick and company can get their hands on. There are plenty of people who want nothing more than to get historical artifacts, and when you throw in the firearms element into the mix, you get an even more valuable item. So when a rare French double-barrel coach gun got brought to Rick, yeah, he was interested. Oh, and he knew it was a dangerous and nasty gun, which we're sure only made him happy to handle it. We understood why when he admitted that this wasn't just a nice gun, it was a gun that was built for those of wealth and good standing. He even said it could have been used by a duke or an earl in France. Talk about high-class company.
It belonged to my uncle back in Iowa. He collected weapons and antiques, and about 7 years ago, gave it to me.
Okay. I mean, it's an incredible gun. It really is. This is really, really high-end stuff. It was probably a coach gun for someone, a duke or an earl or something like that.
While Rick was impressed by the gun, he knew there was more going on here than even he realized. So he happily brought in an expert. The expert was over the moon to have a gun like this in his possession, and revealed many of the unique history markers of the gun, including that it was made in France but then shipped to England and modified. That's where the bayonet was attached.
Right off the bat, examining this gun, I mean, it screamed authenticity. And plus, being so unique, having a side-by-side flintlock is just so cool to begin with.
After going over all the unique details, the expert felt the gun could potentially get $10,000. And that's where things got interesting, because Rick reminded him that these were auction prices. But the man still wanted value for his gun. Rick wanted it to be a low cash price, but the man wasn't biting. So Rick recalled that this guy liked guitars, so he offered a rare Les Paul guitar for him to own as part of a trade. The man looked it over, clearly knew his stuff, and a deal was soon made. As Rick said, sometimes you need a creative solution to problems, and this was a perfect example of that.
How about like a 78 Les Paul, all original? Give me 2 minutes.
Let's see it.
I'm all about creative solutions. This guitar is beautiful. So beautiful, I don't even want it on the showroom floor, because 50 people a day are going to want to hold it and play with it.
Damn, this is beautiful. It's guitar for the gun.
Guitar for the gun.
Number 4. Sword for sandrail. While it's true that Rick Harrison loves him some guns, another thing that he loves is swords. He's gotten a wide array of swords over the years, and has even had some of them restored so that they can be worth even more to him and to the shop. So if someone brings him in a real sword, he's going to take an immediate interest. So when a returning customer brought in a Japanese samurai sword that he claimed was the oldest one he ever had in the shop, complete with case and paperwork to prove it, oh yeah, Rick was interested.
The oldest samurai sword that you had in the shop. The case and the paperwork.
It's all in Japanese?
Yeah, I couldn't read it.
After some back and forth, the seller wanted $18,000 for it. But given how these things can have a tricky history, Rick brought in his sword guy Rocco to look over it and verify that it was a real cutting-edge sword. Sure enough, not only was it authentic, had the proper paperwork and everything, it actually was used by a samurai in feudal Japan. How cool is that?
There's the signature here. Yep, he was a prominent sword maker from the late 1500s. Japan's metals were very limited, so they would pound and fold and make the strongest blades ever compared to the poured steel from medieval Europe. Yoshitsugu is a master that's pretty well known. He made a really good sword.
Because of all those factors, it was worth between $15–20K. At this point, you might be wondering how Rick got away with a trade. After all, that'd be an expensive item you'd need to have to make a trade go through. Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Because Rick decided to get rid of a certain sandrail vehicle that he had put a lot of time and effort into making. But Rick wasn't in the business of breaking even, so he wanted to get more from the customer than just a one-for-one trade. After some serious haggling, they agreed on Rick getting the sword plus $8K so that all sides were happy. Not too bad considering, but yeah, The guy wasn't happy about giving money to Rick. Learn to negotiate better, man.
So give me the samurai sword and $8,000. That's like the best I could do.
All right, you got a deal.
Number 3, 1750, Blunderbuss. For credit. Let's get back to the weapons, shall we? After all, there are plenty of weapons from history that have come into the gold and silver pawn shop, and a 1750 blunderbuss is definitely not something that Rick sees all that often. A guy came into the shop with the gun because he needed money to buy an engagement ring for his girlfriend. When you're willing to give up a rare gun to buy a ring, you must really be in love with that person, just saying. Turns out he inherited the gun from a family member who had gotten it from an auction. That meant his connection to it wasn't that great. Nor did he likely know all that much about the item and its price, which he proved when he mispronounced the gun's name.
What do we got here, man?
It's a 1750 blunderbuss.
Okay. Blunderbuss, not bust.
The blunderbuss was a powerful, albeit very dangerous gun to use because it was meant to literally clear out an area of anyone that was in its path. Rick even noted that you could shove just about anything into its barrel and fire it and it would do serious damage. After bringing in his expert, Rick found out the gun was legitimate and worth about $3,000 in a local situation, you know, like in a pawn shop. Ironically, the seller was already fine with the idea of a trade, so he could just get the engagement ring, and Rick was fine with using that to his advantage. He offered $2,500 in store credit so that the seller could look around, get the ring he wanted, and be happy with his purchase. And that's exactly the deal he took. Sometimes a simple deal is the best deal.
In an auction environment, something like this would be expected to bring anywhere between $3,500 and $5,500.
That's great.
In a more local situation, I would say between $2,500 and $3,000.
Okay. Is this a local situation here?
Yes.
Number 2, Madonna. For Silver Trust Us, unless you've seen this episode, you're not going to expect this trade deal. It's very unique because a customer came in and brought in what he called a bronze bust of Madonna. When you or we hear that name, we think of the legendary singer, but there was another Madonna of fame, and that was tied to the legendary artist Michelangelo. He made a sculpture known as the Madonna Del Pieta, and it was commissioned by the Vatican. And this guy had a perfect replica of it, which made it rare and valuable. The seller was asking $80,000 for it, but Chumley, doing the smart thing for once, knew that he had to bring in an expert to authenticate it and rate it.
So you have a Madonna Del Pieta.
What do you think about it?
It's absolutely fantastic. You don't see these a lot of times. There's not a ton of them that come on the market.
He also said that Michelangelo himself felt that this and the Statue of David were his best works. However, due to where the man was trying to sell it, he wasn't going to get anywhere close to the $80,000 he wanted, but the trade-off was that he was able to arrange a deal for 100 pounds of silver, which at the time was worth around $24,000. Plus, if he invested it, that price could go up. Number 1, the old man's trade. For our last trade, we looked to the late old man who decided to school Chumley on some Las Vegas history. A man came in with a casino $5 chip from the Las Vegas Club.
The Las Vegas Club, which is still downtown, was one of the end places to be. In fact, it's one of the oldest casinos in town.
Chumley was cracking jokes when he saw it, but the old man knew what it was. It was history. Because the Las Vegas Club is one of the oldest places on the Strip, and at the time, a $5 chip was so high that it made you a high roller in the eyes of the establishment. Due to the history and rarity of having these chips, the old man knew it was worth a lot of money. But the question was the chip real? And if it was, how much was its value? True to his nature, the old man tried to do a low deal to get max profit, but the seller offered a cash payout plus a trade. The items he wanted? Some Rat Pack statues. The old man might have looked like he didn't want that deal, but he noted he barely paid anything for them and thus made it happily. And there you have it, everyone. A look at the trades that the Pawn Stars have made over the years that led to some valuable items coming into the shop. Which of these trades did you think was the most impressive? Were there ones that surprised you in terms of the items swapped? Or do you know of another trade that could easily go on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.